Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Hello, Flames fans, and welcome to another Game Over Calgary. And we finally get to see some goal scoring as the Calgary Flames take down the Philadelphia Flyers by a score of 6-3. My name's Conrad Krausert, and Matt DeMille is the man on my right. And you know what? I threw the Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau signs back up today because it was a game that at least Papa Gaudreau was at, and anytime that family is around the team, it's a feel good, and it's especially feels good to come home. Well, not come home yet, but take home 2 points in the standings.
Absolutely. I think I've been labeling this game as a must win since the road trip has started. Of course, with the Flames having played and going to play five really challenging teams that are going to be in the mix right until the very end. This game in Philly, if the fighting chance of making the playoffs was still on the line, this game was must win, and I think the Flames knew that, had that mentality in tonight's game, and we saw some pretty big games from pretty notable guys that we've kind of been hoping to see along the course of this road trip.
And obviously, there were a few guys that had some big familiarities with the Flames on the other side of the ice, and one of them gets on the score sheet. But before we go any deeper in the show, let's get the first ad out of the way. Shift into Hyperdrive and get ready to have some fun with your news source for all the biggest stories in hockey, for your unique style of broadcasting and commentary with a Quebecois flavor. Hyperdrive Hockey combines top-tier hockey analysis, big stories, pop culture, and a fun atmosphere that will drive, debate, make you think, and more. Join Max Van Oak, Daphne Melbeuf, and Kevin Larmé every Tuesday and Friday for Phil on the Hockey World. Watch on YouTube and the Game Over Network channel, or subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, and head to our website, thegameovernetwork.com, for more. And I'm going to agree with Matt C. There was lots to like in that one. And let's quickly go over the game that was. You know, I love and hate these Eastern Road Swings because I was like, oh, right, I have to be sitting at my computer watching this one at 5. Not have to actually stay up late. But then I also had to be like, oh yeah, can't go anywhere to go grocery shopping. I was like, oh, I had to do the skip the dishes order to get my groceries here for dinner. Oh, it was a gong show. And obviously, you work a real job, and so you probably had to be like, can I leave a little bit early?
I will I will admit that a portion of that hockey game was tuned into while I was on Shagganappy Trail on the way home today. I do not condone distracted driving by any stretch of the imagination. I had my phone face down on my seat, but I had the auxiliary cord playing it, so I kind of didn't miss much of it. So I think I ended up missing the first 5 minutes or so of the game. But again, I will say, I think I've said it in every other stream so far. I will take a 5 p.m. 5 p.m. start time, Mountain Time, of course, over an 8 p.m. Because I'm in bed by 9 o'clock, so I'm not going to complain about that.
There's advantages of both. But luckily for you, it was only the first 5 minutes, so you got to see the opening goal of this game. Connor Zary breaking his 8-game pointless streak, opening the scoring in this one. Just good hard work by Zary down low. Eventually worked it back out front where was Huberdeau works it out of the corner, backs up a haul, and a nice tip there by Zary in front, and the Flames went ahead 1-0. Lots of Connor Zary in this one today. Had lots of jump, as everyone saw in the pre-game roster, or if you do still check out that on your social media app of choice. There were a lot of people kind of scratching their heads with Connor Zary starting on the fourth line, but as we saw halfway through the first, he was already back on that top line and back into the scoring column.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I saw it, I definitely scratched my head for sure. I was a little, I mean, I know he hasn't been producing very much as of late. As you said, he just snapped an 8 game pointless streak, but I didn't necessarily think that his performance lately really deemed him to be dropped to the fourth line. I also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I heard that Ryan Huska said it wasn't necessarily a demotion. It was more or less just putting some lines in a blender. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but either way, It was a head scratcher, but as you said, like it didn't seem to last very long, just at the rate of how he was playing. I thought he was probably the best flame forward tonight, and he really had a jump in his game. Whether it was he's trying to show off and kind of get the best of his buddy Pelletier, who's on the other side of the ice. But again, I think that's a game we've been hoping to see out of him as of late that we just haven't been until now.
Yeah, and obviously still probably pretty sore in the knee region, just coming back from his big injury. And so he seemed to be skating a lot more freely today than what I saw in the two shutout defeats. And maybe that is just the fact that he isn't needing to be as defensively responsible when he was with the Backlund and Coleman pairing. And I think we'll probably talk a little bit about them a little bit later on in the show. But that wasn't all the Flames contributed in the first, as it was a big burst of scoring in the first. Nazem Kadri gets his first goal, his 22nd of the season. A huge individual effort, and I guess they're giving Joel Hamley the assist for touching it in the defensive zone before Kadri flew through the entire Flyers players. And just another beautiful shot from Naz, like off the inside post, and just found the nearest bit of or the slightest bit of twine on the far side.
I won't. I mean, I will say, great shot for him and great rush by him. I'm not going to take anything away from him, but I will put a bit of I wouldn't call it blame, but I think Urson tonight, that's one he would want back. I feel like he just wasn't really set in his net, and I think that was the story of 2 out of the 3 goals that he let in before he got pulled. So I definitely saw when I saw that, it just looked like he had a lot of room to shoot on that, I guess, close side of the net. And Kadri must have saw that too, and he did an excellent job picking his spot, ringing it right off the iron. But I mean, talking about pretty poor goaltending performances, that was I don't know if it gets much worse for poor Urson tonight. And again, Kadri made the most of it on his rush for sure.
And I'm not seeing Insider J Money in the chat after his team got beat by the Flames. But yeah, Urson did not perform well. 3 goals on 5 shots. Not the night you want to have, but that's kind of been the story of the Flyers. I'm calling them a little bit of Oilers East, where they hope to outscore their problems more often than not. And like with the talent they've had and the talent they brought in, seems to be that's what Torts wants to play, which doesn't seem like a very Torts system to me. But I digress. Flames up 2-0. Then you had the straw that broke Urson's back. Connor Zary banks it off the back of the Flyers goaltender. And as we said, kind of bounced around with that fourth line and the first line. And gets assists for both Ryan Lomberg and Kevin Rooney, who have been given a lot of opportunities to be the starting line in the last few games. But good to see them get a little bit of the Zary bump as well.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with that. And you mentioned, I want to go back to a point you made with the Flyers and the score or the troubles they've had this season. I don't want to get too far down a path that we don't want to get a little too off topic from our conversation. But you mentioned that the Flyers kind of have the Edmonton Oilers East mentality of outscoring their problems, and we've seen with the Oilers, like that works to a certain extent when you have a guy like McDavid and another guy like Draisaitl that is the core of your forward group. But no disrespect to the Travis Konechny's of the world, you're comparing a Konechny to a McDavid, and that is just, I mean, I
and
mean,
even a Mitchkov to a Draisaitl isn't a fair
maybe in a couple of
comparison.
years. I don't want to knock the kid too far down because he is quite young and he's having quite a pretty good rookie campaign. But yes, I just think like we've seen it doesn't work in Edmonton when they have 2 of the most elite scoring talents in the league. How do you expect Philly to kind of compete with an offense like that, and that being such a integral piece to the foundation of this team, right?
Yeah,
But I digress, of course.
and it doesn't help when both your goalies are below 900 on the season.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'm gonna take something that friend of the show, former host Primetime Klein, said in the chat. Hello, Peter. The Flames made some really bad goalies look good So it's nice to have an opponent's goalie make the Flames look good for a change. Yes, as we've
Absolutely.
talked about, Matt, on this show, the Flames love to make backup goaltenders look like Vezina winners. So the fact that we could get to the quote-unquote 1A in Ersson, or maybe he's the 2A, I guess, if you want to qualify them both as a 2A and a 2B. Glad you waited 15 years for a 6'7" goaltender who has a sub 900 goals against average there, Flyers fans. But I digress. A win is a win. Let's keep going. Got a little shaky there in the middle of the period as Jonathan Huberdeau did one of his talented, not going to look where he's passing to. Actually, no, that's the next goal, I think. But Noah Cates has the goal off just some good individual work by the Flyers, and he danced around Rasmus Andersson, or that was Forrester who danced around Anderson. He gets taken down. Cates jumps on the open puck, and I don't think there's much Dustin Wolf could have done on that one.
No, I agree. I think, like you said it well, like that's a great play by the Flyers. I think you said it was Forster who just walked around Anderson as well. It felt more so like a defensive collapse from the Flames defensive group than something that you have to put on the shoulders of Dustin Wolf. I mean, a point blank shot like that is a 50-50 with just about any goaltender in the league, right? So the play that had me scratching my head at is not only Anderson getting walked, but at the same time, out in desperation, taking a penalty that was, of course, taken away because they scored on the delayed penalty. But that is more so. I'm sitting there thinking, like, how do you put yourself in a position where you're flailing around because, your opposition just walked you? And I hate to say it, but this isn't the first and it won't be the last time we see Anderson get stuck in a hard place like that.
I feel that he feels he needs to be more offensive, and so he's looking to make the interception and get moving forward rather than getting onto his heels and skating back in that position, because he thinks he has Kevin Ball back to support, but Ball's just a step too wide. It's a game of hockey. These bounces happen, in my opinion, but you want to see them reduced. And I wonder how much Rasmus's confidence is shook because of how little he played at the Four Nations. Yes, it's been a week, but you think you're going to play a lot for your country and then you play one game? That can probably play in.
I don't disagree. I will say, like, I think you can make the argument about his confidence being shot prior to the Four Nations, right? Like, there's obviously like the expectation that maybe he'll play a little bit more and he'll be more of an integral piece to that roster, sure. But like, I don't know if you would call it problems, but the issues maybe we've seen in his game, it stemmed prior to the Four Nations, right? Like, it seems like he had that fantastic start where it felt like every night he was scoring and staring down a fan of the opposing team, but like that went stale and that went stale quick, right? Like, I don't think this has been a new issue from him. And while I agree with you that I don't think the Four Nations and his performance there helped, I don't think it is like the catalyst to like maybe we've seen a drop in his confidence, which I do think we have seen.
So I'm going to cut him a little bit of a break for the pre-Four Nations, because he was without Kevin Ball for that stretch of games, right? So he had the injury, and it seems that Rasmus kind of needs that comfort blanket in his defense partner, whether
Sure, yep.
that's Tanev as it has been in the past, or whether this year it's Kevin Ball. Without that, his play does seem to drop a significant amount. He's one of those guys who seems to need to mesh with the guy on the other side of the blue line. But
And you also mentioned like him being more offensively minded, right? So to have a missing Ball who is more defensively sound, and same thing with the Tanev, with them out of the lineup, is there like the argument that while he is offensively minded, there is more importance for him to play a bigger game defensively, which we just have come to learn that there isn't much of, if that makes sense.
I think there's the room for that argument. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think there is some merit to having that conversation.
Sure.
Um, because you saw that kind of the best partner we had for him when ball was down was Joel Hanley. And so I guess maybe he's just a guy who does need that more defensively sound guy to allow him to kind of be who he is as a player. And I think we'll talk about that more later on in today's show with one of the names that's being floated in the Calgary sphere. But let's try and get through this recap. And as much as I want to say that this guy didn't score today, he did. Andrei Kuzmenko gets his 6th of the year. And I misattributed the mistake. It was another top line player. It was Nazem Kadri with the giveaway that led to the goal. And where was that shot for the last 6 months?
Oh my God. I was saying the exact same thing when I saw that. I was like, I don't think we've seen that shade of Kuzmenko.
I don't think we saw him as a Flame. Like,
Yeah,
that was Canucks Kuzmenko.
I agree. Like that, just like instant, like that flick of the switch, puck gets turned over, quick transition play. And it's before you blink, he's already found the back of the net with that like laser like shot he had as well. I was also saying, I was having a conversation with my dad while we were watching the game, and I said it's the most flamesy move for either one of Kuzmenko or Pelletier, or even both, to find the back of the net tonight. So while I did catch myself laughing with Kuzmenko's goal, I wasn't in any way surprised that happened. And in the other side of the conversation, you and I were having a bit of a conversation before the stream started, Conrad, but I said it would have been nice to maybe see something from the Frost Farabee combo to kind of fight back from Kuzmenko's goal, if that makes sense too. But of course we didn't see that.
Frost had 2 assists.
Yes,
so
true.
I guess that's kind of a little bit of a recompense, but not total, as you're kind of saying. But then it wasn't the last goal of the first period, because Igor Sharangovich, who also has been a bit, I was going to say snake bit, but I guess he's sharky, so shark bit might work a little bit better.
Ooh, I like
but
that.
He takes it from Pospisil and Frost. Just another good work down in deep, causing a turnover there by Morgan Frost against his former teammates. And Sharangovich, just hard work in front of the net, puts home the rebound.
And that's something that it's nice to see from him, considering how, as you said, shark bit he's been. By no stretch of the imagination has it been a positive season for him so far. I think he's been very lackluster in the goal scoring column. So it's nice to see him tuck one, and he had, I would say there was just a little bit more edge to his game tonight that maybe I haven't necessarily seen in games past.
Yeah, and it's kind of maybe he's one of the benefactors of that line blender, where he is being on a different lineup, where he's not the guy on the wing of Kadri and Huberdeau, where he's kind of expected to be the secondary trigger man, but can be the primary trigger man on his own line. Maybe that's just kind of the role he has to play. And Peter Klein adding in on our conversation about Kuzmenko. That was the first couple of weeks with the Flames. Should they actually extend him, Kuzmenko? The man knows how to make a first impression, if nothing else. I'm really interested to see what first impression he makes with CSK in Moscow next season. Anyways, heading to the second period, Mackenzie Weegar with the power play goal assists to Morgan Frost, who kind of just did the dirty work in front of the net, just shoveled it back to Weegs. And that was a howitzer we haven't seen from Weegar in a little bit. I know there were some talks that he has had some sort of nagging, not an injury, but a soreness coming into Four Nations. So maybe we should just be happy that he didn't have to play for 10 days and could go to Cancun for a week and just get some sunshine and get the bruises healing a little bit. But his 7th of the year.
That's news to me. Yeah, that's news to me for sure.
It's something that I heard through a source I don't love, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to put into that. But yeah, just a great shot from Weegar, and we've all seen it. When he gets a hold of one, it's a missile. He had a couple today that they brought that Sportsnet tracker up, and it was in the low 90s, so he could start for most MLB teams with the mileage like that. But and another assist for Huberdeau, his 24th of the year, as he picks up the good old I touched the puck secondary assist. But can't complain when the power play is actually contributing. Because that's been one of our our complaints for most of the season, was that Power play is the momentum killer for this team, and they managed to get one today.
Yeah, I mean it's not great by any stretch, but I just feel like their power play is very hot and cold, you know? Like I feel like there have been stretches down this season where they've been, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there was a time at some stage of this season where they had goals and power play goals and 4 or 5 straight, right? So it's very hot or cold, hit and miss, I feel like, and it's been cold as of late, and hopefully this is maybe the ignition they needed to kind of jumpstart it again. I mean, I thought that maybe adding the new faces in Frost and Farabee would have given it some sort of injection too, and obviously that wasn't necessarily the case right away, but it was nice to see him tuck one as well. And granted, Philly had a really good penalty kill unit heading into it. I feel like they had 14 straight penalty kills,
Yeah.
if I heard that right on Sportsnet too. So, um, I mean, I don't know how good their penalty kill's been for the course of the season, but lately it's been pretty hot, and it must have felt pretty good for the Flames to get one on them. In that case.
And for the Flames to go 50%, making good on one of their two opportunities, those are numbers I can live with moving forward. And then Sean Couturier made it so it is eventually Couturier's goal. Originally was credited to Matvei Michkov, but Couturier bumps it over the line, his 10th of the year. Just follow the bouncing puck, jumped around like my heart rate in the third period, found its way over Wolf and just gets tucked over the goal line. Good individual effort by Michkov to get the shot off, but you'd love to see one of the Flames defensemen win the race to that puck instead of Couturier.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, and then I was hoping that this would be the other jersey ending with 7, but it was number 27, getting his 16th goal of the year. An empty netter iced this one 6-3, your final. So, in what was I'll aptly say a chaotic game, the Flames needed to win this, and they do. I think that's kind of how the coaching staff should view this. Was it a complete and total dominant victory like you hope to see over some of these teams that are struggling? No. But we're also seeing the Oilers losing to the Ducks today. So we got to remember that every team in this league can win games. But as we've said, if this is a team that's going to struggle and be a bubble team, and that's looking like it's going to be the case for the foreseeable future, these are games you need to win.
Absolutely. And like when you consider how tight the playoff race is between Calgary and Vancouver, of course, and even like St. Louis, who's just behind them, but they seem like everything's clicking for them at the moment. I think as of right now, we're officially 2 points ahead of the Canucks in the standings. Of course, we have a game ahead of them, and they play tomorrow night against, lo and behold, Anaheim as well. But I've said it again. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The Flames, if they are to make the playoffs, they need to be putting up fights against these top contending teams that we have seen and gotten very accustomed to this road trip. But the games they need to be winning are against against the struggling teams, the Phillies of the world, the Anaheims of the world when they end up playing those guys again too, right? So I labeled tonight's game as a must win. It was a must win. They did win, and I'm going home happy because of it.
And you know what? We're talking about the Canucks, but the Kings aren't exactly lighting the world on fire ahead of us either. They're on a 4-game losing streak, and that was something. Yes, they have 2 games in hand. Yes, there's a bunch of other extenuating circumstances, but I said this last time I was on. The Kings aren't world beaters. There is the potential that if this string of losses continues, the Flames could be in a world where they get that 3rd seat. I'm not counting on that by any stretch of the imagination. But let's look at, as we said, the Kings goaltending, suspect at best. When you have Big Save Dave as your backup, we all know that things can go wrong real quick. Ask the Flames, ask Toronto. So let's move on. Connor Zary was kind of the star of this game, as I realize I had the wrong period up. It says we're in overtime. We're not quite there yet. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. Connor Zary was the star of tonight's show. Snake bitten through the last 8, really ever since he came back from his knee injury. And of course, you got to give him a little bit of cut him some slack in that sense, right? You're coming back from what was a pretty vicious knee on knee hit. Did not look like it was a great hit, and would have taken a lot to recover from. So you got to give him a couple of games to really get his feet and his legs under him and stuff. And I think we did that. And there came a point where we needed a big game from him tonight, and I think he delivered and some. Of course, I don't necessarily. You can make the argument whether Huska was maybe sending a message to him, putting him on the fourth line tonight, and whether there was a message there or whether there wasn't a message there. He took whatever kind of expectation that was needed of him lately, and he delivered tonight and in a big way.
I'm just gonna say ditto all of that, and let's head on to period number 2. I'll actually get the right graphic this time. Boom, we finally got there.
There we go.
Looking for ways to help Upstart Media Company employing over 30 young journalists, broadcasters, and analysts across this great country of Canada. We got a few ways. If you have a few bucks to spare kicking around, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/thegameovernetwork. There you'll find multiple tiers featuring different rewards and goodies for helping us grow. There's extra access, exclusive looks behind the scene, Discord benefits, merch discounts, opportunities to give us feedback that we can't see in other ways. And you can join us for special shows live, or you can interact with us, the hosts, as we launch more ways to improve your experience. If you're not able to spare a few bucks, that's fine. We do have a free tier available so that you don't miss out. And if you really want to help us, make sure to hit like, subscribe here on YouTube, hit that notify bell so you know when the Game Over Calgary streams do go live. And if you're listening in podcast form, rate us 5 stars in your favorite podcast app, share your work, and hey, maybe write a nice comment. I've been going back to some of our videos and looking for comments to see if there's anything we need to change. So if you are not here in chat and watching later on, leave a comment. It does get read. Once again, for the Patreon, that is patreon.com/thegameonetwork for those tantalizing goodies. So I had written in here because, as I said, I hadn't been on since the start of this road trip when we smacked down the Great 8 and only let him score 1 goal, unlike those guys up in Edmonton, who let him score 3. Other than that, it's been kind of doom and gloom for a lot of Flames fans, and it's brought a lot of people questioning whether we should be full in on Team Tank or you buy at the deadline. What have your thoughts of this up and down road swing been? Because you've gotten to see a lot more games of it than I have, or at least commentate on them.
I have, yeah. I've been in the mix for, I think this is the 3rd game I've covered on the road trip. And I think doom and gloom is probably the best way to put it, right? I will say I wasn't present for the Washington game. I was in the middle of the...
Yeah, you were in some ocean on some big boat. Like, who does that?
I was away. Let's just say I was away, getting some sun and sand, which was nice. But either way, I was able to. I kind of jumped on right after the Washington game, and it must be, or I thought I was almost a curse at the rate the Flames were playing, because it seemed like they had a pretty decent outing against Washington, and then games against Tampa Bay and Florida really hampered what the start of a really good road trip was. And of course, I was also on the stream for the Carolina game, and I know it was more of a heartbreaking result, and it was, like, I'm not gonna discredit that, but I mean, granted, considering how outplayed the Flames were in the first 20 minutes of the game and the direction that things were headed, I will take a loser point any day of the week. And then, of course, the must win today. Now, I'll flip this back to you, Conrad, because I had a conversation with Marek during the Tampa Bay game. And my question for him was, when we end the road trip against Dallas, in your eyes, what do you see as being a successful road trip in the Flames standards? Now, before I'll pitch it to you, I'll just recap with what I said. And I said, at the minimum, a 500 record is probably what I'm looking for. I know they're playing against some pretty good competition, and I mean, it would be silly to say I want a 5-1 record, a 6-0 record, just considering the not only the strength of schedule, but even just like they got dealt Florida and Carolina in back-to-back games. Like they would have needed some sort of miracle to pull out 4 points in that sense as well too. So for me, my like bare minimum for a successful road trip was a 500 record. And we do, I mean, if I'm doing the math right, with a win against Dallas, we would end it 3-2-1, and that would be past the 500 threshold. So I still think we're on pace for it. I'll pitch this one to you though. Where do you hope a successful road trip ends for the Flames?
So I also covered this topic in my first game, and obviously I had a little bit more optimism because I didn't have to watch the Flames get shut out twice at that point in time. And when I said on the show, I said 4-2 would be absolutely unreal on this road trip. But I'm not happy with 3-2-1 coming off of it.
Interesting.
Games aren't going to get easier for this Flames team. If you think you can go into the playoffs and you're going to play weaker competition than what we just ran into for 6 games, newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to win 4 of 7 against teams that I think are better than the Carolina Hurricanes. If we want to go all the way, we're probably going to have to run through a team like Dallas. So 3-2-1, that wins you a series. I'll give you that. If this was the playoffs, that would be a 1 series. We'd be moving on. But our one win might have been against one of the wins, might have been against one of the best goaltenders in the world right now in Logan Thompson. Then we won a gimme, or what should be a gimme, tonight. And we took a point home, the loser point, against Carolina. So we'd be going into if we win to continue this kind of not so great analogy, if we win in Ottawa, we'd be going to a game, or in Dallas, we'd be going to a game 7. And are you happy with that if you're the Flames? Or would you rather come home with a series win in 6? So
I mean, if you want a hypothetical answer from me, I will answer that to you. I mean, a game 7 against Dallas, I mean, we all know how those end up, obviously. But
we can't go back that far in history.
No, I'm just teasing in that sense. But I mean, I will be maybe not petty in the sense, but like a game 7 in round 1 is a lot farther than I expected the Flames to make it in the start of the season. So, I mean, will I be happy with that? Yeah, I mean, obviously I want the series win and stuff, but granted, I mean,
you're not going to get a gimme in the playoffs like you got tonight.
No, we're not. And that's what I was going to add on. You mentioned, again, a notable win against the Capitals. Can't take anything away from them there. But yes, this is like, it's really just this road trip, the way I see it as, is like we can almost scratch the gimme off of the record in the sense that it's a gimme. You should pick up that point. Mm-hmm. It's really a 5-game series is what the Flames are playing at this point against 5 playoff contending teams. And in that sense, what are they, 1-2-1?
Yeah.
So at best they can split game, or they would win game 5, right? And have some sort of weird season tie type thing, right?
So it's tough to understand and value where the Flames are at. And how are you, because as the broadcast stated, all of the pro scouts were in town in Philadelphia today, because I'm sure they'll be talking on the plane. Hopefully they've got giving whoever is on the block, give them the good noise canceling Bose headphones for the whole flight. Dennis Miramanov talking to you. Did I say and Dan Vladar too? But like, you've just handed our pro scouts one of the hardest tasks in the whole league, to know where this team is.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with that. Especially on this road trip, right? Like, you start off, and again, you go toe to toe and beat, what is a Stanley Cup contender this year, and then you for sake of a better term, lay 2 eggs, maybe 3 eggs against Florida, Tampa, Carolina, and then again a gimme of a game in Philly, which is more so a wash than anything, right? Granted, when has the role of a scout ever been easy for the Flames, though, with what direction this team is headed. That's been the argument before we even started this season, is where do we expect this team to go, right? Like there's like on paper, it's like, oh, this team is 110% a selling team at the deadline. Like there's no future, like maybe not no future, sorry, but there's no
No direction.
possibility. Yes, exactly. Like there's on paper, the chances of making the playoffs and being a playoff contending team is little to none, right?
Yeah,
But
and
then
I gotta say, because Peter, I think you're still in the chat. Peter, back at the start of the season, did any of us think this was a possibility? Like, let's bring it back to the three of us and Anand talking in the preseason when we were all, oh, who's gonna still be on this roster come the trade deadline? Like that
and
was.
somehow, yeah. Would Jakob Pelletier have been on your list of guys out the door?
I don't think he'd be on my list of guys that were on the team to start the year. Like
Fair enough.
after him
Fair
getting
enough.
waived and sent to the minors, like,
Fair
ugh,
enough. I mean, they did their job in moving off Andrei Kuzmenko, but that was also like
that
that's
was
a
kind of
guinea.
forced. Yeah,
Yes, and that you know what? Like we also had conversations where it's not via trade and we get assets in return. It's some sort of contract buyout, right? Like ship him off to wherever he wants to go type thing, right? Um, but you bring up a good point. Like, is this really the position that we expected Craig Conroy to be in at this point, or the Flames, right? With 3 days till the deadline and not a good or a clear direction as to whether you're going buyers and sellers. And I don't want to get too far into it because I know that's a segment in the third period of tonight's
yeah.
show. So I mean, we can kick it
Let's
to that now, or
let's do an ad read and then I'll let you continue.
okay, perfect.
So if you're enjoying this show so far, and what isn't there to like? This is always fun when it's me and Matt together. You probably want some more. Well, make sure to hit the like button on this video, click subscribe on the channel, and make sure to check the notification bell so you're alerted to when we go live. If you're listening right now on a podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, regardless of where you're listening. It helps that algorithm thing. If you really, really like us, make sure to follow us on your favorite social media platforms. Find the Game Over Network on Blue Sky at thegameovernetwork.com. Yes, that is the handle to follow. On TikTok and Twitter at Game Over NHL. On Instagram, Threads, and LinkedIn at Game Over Network. I'm no longer on X. I'm only on this Blue Sky now. You can find me at Conrad Krausert at Blue Sky Social. Where can people find you about these days, Matt? Even though probably not posting much with how busy life is for you for the next little
No,
string.
well, you can definitely find me on Blue Sky, just like you can find Conrad and the rest of the Game Over community. I'm also on Twitter. I can't say I'm incredibly active on both. I'm more of a lurker, but either way, if you ever want to talk shop with me, you can find me on either one of those channels. Same thing with, I don't know if we plugged our Discord as well, but you're more than welcome to join our Discord as well, where you can chat with not only myself and Conrad, but the rest of the Game Over Calgary group, as well as just the Game Over network as a whole, which is a really a fun and exciting way that we kind of keep in contact with everybody.
Yeah, so check all that out. And if you head over to thegameovernetwork.com, you can sign up for our upcoming newsletter. I think it's always kind of in that upcoming stage, but I've heard it will be coming out shortly.
As
So
have I.
before we head to our talk about if the Flames are buyers or sellers, let's talk to you, Sportsnet 960 personality Peter Klein. At the start of the year, I would have believed you if you said they'd finish with 65 points. Don't really have that for them before the deadline. This is beyond best case scenario from the start of the year. Yeah. And you also have to remember, we've also had 2 centers claimed on waivers on a team that lacked center depth to start with. And we've only brought in 1 center, obviously that being Morgan Frost, who hasn't really even played as a center much for this squad. So, yeah, it's an interesting time to be a Flames fan. So let's talk buyers or sellers, and let's start that off with the conversation about the trade that has already happened that brought in both Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee and shed Andrei Kuzmenko and Jonathan Huberdeau's son to the Philadelphia Flyers, not Florida Panthers. Where's my brain today? Why don't you break it down for us there, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you and I really had a conversation about the trade. I don't know if we really got to wrap our heads around it. But as you said, like um, or as I also said, I feel like one of the big and easy moves for Conroy this season was to find a new home for Andrei Kuzmenko. Whether, as I said, contract buyout, trade, even just dropping him to waivers, that kind of stuff. And of course, they brokered a deal with Philly that sent Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost our way in exchange for Pelletier, Kuzmenko, and I believe it was a second.
Mhm.
And when I first found out about the trade, I was surprisingly impressed by it. I think prior to that trade and kind of my mentality ahead of the deadline and through the course of the season is I'm okay to make deals as long as assets or like draft capital and prospects are pretty untouchable, if that makes sense. And I know the Flames were kind of on the hunt for that 2C center. I know a guy like Dylan's cousin's name was thrown out a lot before, and Morgan Frost maybe wasn't the prime target originally, or what was rumored to be target, but it was a trade that made sense for the Flames. Of course, we give up a guy like Pelletier who had his flashes, but at the same time struggled, and of course, as you said, Conrad was at one point put on the waiver wire, and we trade those two guys for two young guys that Joel Farabee still has contract left, and Morgan Frost, who's an RFA this year. So there's a lot more um it's a lot more private in terms of trying to sign him to another deal, if that makes sense. But I really like the trade from Conroy because he did a good job making sure this team didn't get they stayed younger, and these guys kind of fit the dynamic and the I guess direction that the Flames were kind of building towards, in the sense this younger core team, and they didn't get older by picking these guys up. And I mean, we did lose Pelletier for it, but I was concerned that a first was also headed out the door as well,
Yeah,
which
I
I'm
was
glad
about to say
wasn't.
that. I was about to say that Conroy not using one of our two remaining first rounders, because by all intents and purposes, I think that first Flames pick, well, actually, it could be Montreal's pick. Or no. Whose do we have? We have the Flames, we have the Devils, and we have the
And
Panthers.
Florida, yeah. And
Yeah,
our first is
the
our
lowest of
own
them.
first is the one that went to Montreal.
I think it was the lower of ours and Florida. I don't, so which it will be the Flames. I don't think
Yes.
the Panthers season's going to bottom out that badly. So it will likely be the Flames first going in that deal. The fact that we didn't have to dip into either the other two firsts is a blessing. Because let's be real and be honest with each other in talking that the Flames retool is not done by any stretch of the imagination just because of this one quote unquote playoff push.
Yeah, I agree. As I said, I thought the you said it, like, more work needs to be done, absolutely, but I thought this was a move that just it made sense to make. And again, consider me impressed. Now, you mentioned, like, now there's the argument with, again, the deadline being 3 days away. Are they buyers or are they sellers? And
I think we're
that
tweeners.
I think, like, I don't even like the deadline is 3 days. The most, like, mind-blowing thing is the trade deadline is literally 3 days away, and I don't know what the answer is. And at this point, I feel like 31 teams in the league know what direction they're going at the deadline, whether they're staying neutral, they're the buyers, they're the sellers, that kind of stuff. And I don't know which way it's gonna go.
So, as I said, I think we're tweeners. I think we will make deals. But I think it's going to be a focus on, as much as I hate this term, the hockey trade, where it's guy for guy and maybe a pick swap involved in there too. And obviously, I know this rumor's really heated up recently. I don't love who the source is on it once again, but, or the primary source on this, but it's been kind of followed up by Anthony DeMarco. Sounds like the Flames have reached out to the Bruins on defenseman Brandon Carlo. Carlo, very much in the mold of Robin Regeer type defenseman. He is a stay-at-home guy in the right age range if you're thinking the Flames are going to re-sign Rasmus Anderson. They're like 2 weeks apart in terms of birthday, if I remember correctly. And as much as I've liked Kevin Ball as a complementary piece with Rasmus, Carlo is Kevin Ball, but even more defensively responsible.
So I saw the same thing, and I will be upfront in saying can't say I know much about Carlo's game. I did a bit of a
A
quick
quick
Google on
dive?
him.
Yeah.
And I mean I can hit you with the stats. 28 years old, second round pick in 2015, 9 points in 61 games this year, and of course like that kind of speaks to him being more of that shutdown guy. So I mean, I'm not necessarily concerned about the stat line and his point totals and stuff. So like let's disregard that. I will say I saw within the last couple of days the same kind of reports that you've said, in terms of the Flames kind of pursuing Carlo. I will say the return that I've seen that the Flames, I can't say the Flames are thinking about, but the mock returns that I've seen on socials, and I can't name anybody off the top of my head because I can't remember, but I've seen high-end prospects slash high-end picks in return for him. And I don't know if you know much more about this guy than I do, Conrad, so I'll let you speak up. But the minute I hear a high-end prospect, i.e., maybe like a Sam Honzek of sorts, or some sort of first or high second or
The
something.
name that I've heard is Hunter Brustevich,
See,
which is not a name I want to give up.
That scares me. I 100% agree. Like that scares me, and I'm regardless if this guy is like a juiced up Kevin Ball, as great as that sounds, because that genuinely does sound great. I mean, I was a big Robin Regehr guy in his heyday. I mean, just the trajectory and what we've seen from Hunter Brustevich, I want to see it played out. I don't necessarily want to just
And
that kind of argument where you trade him before you really see what he can do, right?
and our argument that we've said here on Game Over is the Flames have a platoon of seventh defensemen. Why are we
Yes.
adding another name to that ranks when the three name or there's four names on this decor I think that are written in pen every night: Braden Bahal, Rasmus Anderson, Mackenzie Weegar, Kevin Ball. Why are we messing around with that this year for a guy that isn't going to put pucks in the back of the net for a team that's already struggling?
That was also my argument too, right? Like it's just it's I mean, the Flames have been no strangers to picking up depth defensemen at the deadline. I don't know if I want to phrase Carlo as depth defenseman, but either way, like
Is top four
yeah,
where we really need to be focusing?
yes, agreed.
Like,
So yeah,
because let's say this trade goes through. Let's say doesn't include a roster player, includes someone like Brustevich, that caliber.
yep.
Then your top pairing probably becomes Carlo Anderson, and that bumps Ball down with Weegar, and I don't necessarily love that combination. We haven't seen it play out this year, but it kind of seems like that would be a little bit of chaos. And
And
then
I
that
also think like to add on
Pahal
to
and
that,
yeah,
like you know, we talk about top four the like kind of being a priority, right, at
mm-hmm.
this point for the Flames. And again, he's young, and I don't want to start putting a bunch of pressure on him. But from what we've seen in his time in junior and with the Wranglers and stuff, like, who's saying Brustevich doesn't have the potential of being that top four guy in a couple of years,
And
right?
we're potentially 6 months away from introducing a very, very good offensive defenseman to this lineup, but still not good enough for the World Juniors in Zane Parekh.
Ooh.
Like, we forget that. That's 6 months away where he could, in theory, jump the A and play NHL minutes next year, whether that's he gets the 10 games and then goes back as an overager. We don't know. There's still plenty of time to figure that out. Hey, yes, he can go back for one more year.
Yes, so he's eligible one more year. He can't play in the AHL system. So he
Yeah.
can come
Go
up,
back and
play.
score 40 goals next year.
Yes. So
But
it's either, yeah, depending on what direction. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off here, but we're talking junior hockey and I'm immediately on
yeah.
board. But depending on which way the Flames go, he can play, I think it is, you're right, up to a total of 10 games. And once that 10 games are played,
You have
he
to make your
has,
decision.
yeah, you have to make your decision. And so it's either he's with the Flames or he's another year back in Saginaw in the OHL. But either way, that's also an option. And the rate he's been scoring, I mean, for those of you who haven't heard, he's hit 30 goals this season as a
Who's the
defenseman.
other guy that scored 30 goals twice in the
I
OHL?
believe it was Mr. Bobby Orr.
We don't really like that name because of what he just wrote the other week, but impressive stat line to be compared to, right?
Yes, 100%,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's hard to have a trajectory like Bobby Orr, but I mean that's
Well, and
him.
he has a two better knees than Bobby Orr ever did.
Yes, and he's got it. Like that's the thing. It's him and Bobby Orr. Like nobody else has ever done that in the OHL, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean that is a Flames fan. Like you have to be so excited for as well. So, I mean it's 6 months away, so you have no idea where he's gonna end up and stuff. But I mean, even if it's not next season, the season after, and hopefully, the next 15, 20 seasons after that, right?
Yeah. And I can't say that I'd be unhappy with a pairing of Prek and Bustevich playing 12 minutes a night as a third pair, learning how to be NHL defenseman next year.
100%. That's
That needs to be
exactly
your
it.
future, right? Like,
Yeah.
and if that's your future, why are you sending out assets to get an arguable middle or I don't think a guy that's probably playing a defensive role on a top line in the NHL. But then that means you have the expendable player being Braden Pahal, who has been very good this year. Like, as I said,
Yes.
one of the few names that's written in pen on this roster. That
Yep.
doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head, right? Like, again, whether you want to call it a retool or a rebuild, why is there a need to get rid of your future in a guy like Brstevich for a guy who's, again, he's got 600 games in the NHL already. He's proven he can play, but still, it's like you're chopping off so much like time to have a younger core to like go out and get a guy that's, almost 29, right?
Yeah.
It's just
It's the tail end
for
of the career, unfortunately, looking at
exactly.
NHL defensemen.
Yes. And again, like I'm not I don't want to say like I'm completely opposed to going out and getting a guy like that, but again, it comes down to the value that is in return. And again, this is all speculation, right? Like we have no exact idea what the return is being requested from Boston. So we could be completely eating our own words in a couple of days, right?
It
But
could be Braden Pahal in the deal. Like, that's...
exactly. But like from what is rumored and what we know of at this moment, I just don't think the value or the return is enough to constitute going out and getting a guy like that. And again, what it really just seems like getting a guy to help the Flames over the hump of this season specifically, not even the future of this team.
Okay. So I think we've worked that enough. Let's take a quick hit on the two Flames that are rumored to having their name on the block, so to say, in DeMille Miramanov and Dan Vladar. I think you need to understand asset management and get rid of both these guys.
So I've been on the trade, and you know this.
Oh, we've
very
had
well.
this conversation numerous times.
I've been on the trade Dan Vladar train, and against was it Florida that he had that just spectacular outing against? I'm even more so on the train of trade Dan Vladar. However, the one name that shocks me is Miramanov because, like, why?
Because
Like,
he's the one who isn't in the rotation of the seventh defenseman.
no, sorry. I don't mean why trade him. Why is there a need from other teams to acquire a player like that? Is what I mean by why.
Well, yeah, that's fair, and it kind of feels like he's kind of been the throw-in on a couple of these deals. The one that brought him to Calgary, and now the one that potentially could see him leave Calgary. I still think there's a lot of meat on that bone. Like, I think there's a lot of teams who would still need that 5'6" guy who can log 12 minutes and potentially have some offensive upside. Is his trade value high? No. I'm not going to claim that whatsoever, especially with his recent string of play. But I still think there are teams that need that type of player. Now, is that in turn going to change a lot of assets that the Flames have coming in? No. But I think he will be a part of something. Whether it's him and Vladar and a pick going somewhere that needs goaltending. Who knows? Dan Vladar might not make its trip onto the plane tonight after seeing Erson and, what's the name of the big, tall Russian goaltender they had today?
Oh, Fedotov?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Just
remember, Fedotov was supposed to be the savior in terms of goaltending for this squad. As I said, they waited 15 years for him to come across. Or 13, I think it is. But as a 6'7" goaltender, he can't move his feet. Or at least that's what I saw. I could be wrong.
I will say
tough.
like there's one, whether it's Philly, whether like again poking jokes at after tonight's game or not, whether it's true or not, there is a demand for like a 1B-esque netminder like Vladar.
Especially in the out east, like in this Atlantic division where it is the Flyers and then it's the Atlantic, where it's the Flyer or Capitals and then everyone else.
Yep.
There's a lot of those teams that could use a Dan Vladar. And I do have to give an update. It is 5-1 Ducks now at the end of the second. So Flying V time is going on. Hopefully
they can do that to Vancouver tomorrow night too.
That's the hope. Of course, that's the second game of the back-to-back. But as I said, there's lots of teams out here. It's the Metro that they're in. My brain is not fully here today. But do you reunite Dan Vladar as the backup to the New Jersey Devils? Jakob Markstrom. That's a tandem that's worked well. Not that I think they're looking for a goaltender. Could he be a great 1B to Elvis Merzlikins for this Blue Jackets team that's trying to take the memory of Johnny Gaudreau to the playoffs and fend off Adam Fox and the Rangers? Ugh. That still feels like a swear coming off my lips. There's a lot of teams I think that could be a Dan Vladar away from maybe not being a starter, but being a very solid backup to pick up 8 points in the road or try and win you some number of that on this push to the playoffs. Hey, maybe even the Sens need to take a kick on Dan Vladar.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I absolutely agree. There's 100%. I mean, it feels like every trade deadline there's always a need for some sort of netminder. I could also make the argument that this is the time where you can sell him pretty high for teams that are desperate, that they are that fringe bubble team.
So
that it's hey,
here's a thought that I think someone in the other room in my house that's probably watching this episode doesn't enjoy the thought of this. But is Dan Vladar not a better backup than Alex Lyon in Detroit? Or is he better than Cam Talbot?
I would make the argument that he's at least comparable to one of them. I mean, I would make the argument that if you catch him on the right night, he's comparable to Cam Talbot, if not better.
Yeah. I think every night he's on par, but there are better flashes. Now, what do you get in return from a team that's also kind of in the same bubble as you are? I don't know. Is it worth taking the risk on taking an early draft pick, saying, I think you guys aren't going to make the playoffs when you're running Eric Gustafsson out there every night as a defender, and Justin Hall? Let's look at that team. Oh, William Lagesson is playing for Detroit. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Ugh,
yeah.
Yuck, stinky. But I think there's lots of opportunity there for us to move Vladar. I just realized we're over the 60-minute mark. I'm sure you're shocked, Matt. An episode between the two of us going over an hour
does not surprise me one bit.
So, fans, if you've got any questions for us, throw them in chat now. And Matt, I'm gonna have to take your pretty face away for 2 seconds as I talk about our merch.
Oh, have at her.
Where is my... What better way to support something you love than by rocking this clothing? Game Over's apparel line has dropped with 3 unique designs. Whether you feel the nostalgic pull of our retro skater design, want to make a statement with our established design, or want to wear your love for goalies proudly with our live and die by the goalie design, which I do think we need to get one, like a variant edition made where it's a wolf head instead of our wolf head version of our logo.
Ooh,
Live and die by the Wolfie.
I
Anyways, or if you just need another coffee mug to get you through this early spring and probably the second winter that Calgary's going to get, we have you covered. Designed by Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg. Use the QR code on stream now to take a look through our apparel store and help us rebuild local sports media in Canada, all the while repping your community. I need to talk to Brady now about that. Ugh.
Limited edition tees.
Yeah,
Now.
Limited edition Wolfie tees. And
I might buy out the entire store myself.
Oh yeah, you might have a battle with Johnny Gaudreau forever in chat. But you know what? I haven't actually given the awoo. I had to give the awoo after talking about Dustin. Like, this just makes sense. I know you can't hear it through our Discord, but
Nope.
But know that just went through. So let's go on into overtime. I didn't see really any comments, questions, or concerns, but I'm going to just scroll back in here. I guess I'm going to turn this comment from Johnny Gaudreau forever into a little bit more of a talk about Connor Zary. Zary is back, boys. I don't think he's fully back. I don't think he'll be 100% healthy until next season. But if this is the level we're going to expect from a not 100% Connor Zary, even if it's not on a regular basis like it was prior to the injury, I think I'm relatively okay with that.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like, I hate to watch the video because it's unsettling to see a knee bend like that. And like, you got to give him credit for bouncing back so quickly, because if you told me that he's out, month to month, has to get surgery, that kind of stuff, I would 110% believe you. Right? So like, credit where credit is due. The kid wants to play and he wants to be in the lineup every night, but you can't tell me, I agree with you, Conrad, you cannot tell me that he's 100% healthy and he's going to be for some time now. Like, there's going to be yeah, I agree.
So thinking of long-term health for this player, do you think maybe he should be consideration for being a scratch on some of these back-to-backs as this season continues to try and keep him fresh for the playoffs? Or are the Flames in a spot where they can't afford to scratch him, which is kind of where my thought is.
They're doing the ultimate Flames thing in the sense of being neither on either side of the fence, like the same thing with where they sit or where I believe they sit at the deadline is the same thing where they sit with Zary. It's like, okay, sure, like there's obviously a priority to like preserve his health with him being so young and have so much seasons ahead of him, but if you take him out of games, he's shown this tonight is perfect example that he can be a valuable asset to the Flames playoff run. So there's the argument where it's 100% like you protect him and maybe help him recover a little bit quicker by taking him out of, back-to-backs and that kind of stuff. However, by doing that, are the Flames in less of, or are they in a worse position to potentially make the playoffs with him out of the lineup? Right?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
It's like two sides of the coin, right?
Yeah, I'm in a fairly similar thought process. That the Flames kind of need to almost go the DeMar DeRozan route where game management needs to be thought of. But is it at the cost of potentially ruining a playoff push? I don't think we have enough of a bubble on Vancouver to do that.
No.
So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of him on the stretch drive.
I think it's sitting down with Zary and being like, hey, like, we know you're an integral piece to this playoff push, but we want you to know that we put your health and your safety ahead of that. And I think it's a matter of sitting down and being like, hey, you need to tell us if you can go or not, right? Yeah. Like, this is going to come down to you, and they need to have faith. And, again, I don't know Connor personally, but he needs to know that this is not a laughing matter where it's like I'll keep playing even though I'm hurt, right?
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, if the doctors don't have a say in this, then they say, yeah, he can play or whatever. I think it needs to come down to his comfort level and what he wants to do for himself, right?
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to turn a question here from Scott White into a little bit of a commentary piece before we shut it down. How important is that rescheduled game coming down to be against a team the Flames are chasing down? Like, instead of being on the 8th of January, it's the last game of the NHL schedule with an 8:30 Mountain puck drop. Like, it's probably the last game of the NHL season.
Like, at the trajectory, and like, as you said, LA is not doing so hot right now. The Flames are still kind of this wish-and-washy type team. Like, I could very much believe that there will be a situation in which that game could come down to the last wild card spot type thing, or that third seed in the Pacific or whatever, right? Like, you know what else it also kind of reminds me of is, the season they clinched in, what was it, 2015, where they beat the LA Kings in the last game of the season to make it in the playoffs. I mean, I'm a sucker for good storytelling, and that has a great story written all over it. So maybe, do I necessarily want that?
Matt,
who knows? But
if the Flames can jump the Kings and the Pacific Division stays where it's at, do you know what that brings us in round one?
oh my God! Sorry, I just looked at the standings.
It would be a Battle of Alberta if that is the case.
Do I want that though? That's my real question is, do I really want that? I don't know.
I want it for the vibes, Matt. I want it for the vibes.
Well, that's just because the Game Over Calgary and Game Over Edmonton team are just going to be traveling.
Oh yeah, we're
we're
doing live shows the entire time if that's the case.
Which, if that's the case, I'm in for it. But I can't say my oh gosh, what was it, 2022? That year. I can't say that. I think I still have nightmares about that series sometimes.
Well, we don't have to deal with certain goaltenders forgetting how to play goal for 2 weeks.
True.
But
we don't, but Edmonton might.
Yeah, that's true, and we all saw how a certain 97 disappeared for the first round last year, just didn't get punished for it. But anyways, let's stop looking ahead of ourselves that far. Apologies, and look ahead for the rest of the week. On Thursday, it will be the Flames versus the Stars prior to the trade deadline. So that is the last Flames game before the deadline. Anand and Marek, will be bringing you that one. Then the game after is the Flames returning home to take on the Canadiens de Montréal. Anand will be hosting. And does Montreal have who they are sending over for that game? It will be Kay joining, so that'll be fun.
That's awesome.
Kay and Anand, I think that one might be like a 2-hour game over if they let Kay and Anand just keep talking. And then the Flames do get a 4-day break, which is nice. Get some healthy bodies back in and get Kevin Ball over the last of whatever illness he's got going on. The next Game Over crossover is going to be me and Zach Payne. Is it Zach? Is that his last name? Out of Vancouver? No, Zach King.
King.
Yeah, my brain was...
Zach Clark. I believe it's Clark.
Clark. He goes by Zach King. Anyways, It is me and Zach that are going to be bringing you that one. So, that's your next little stretch from us here on Game Over. Hope the next stretch of the Flames will follow in the form of this one. The Calgary Flames win 6-3 over the Flyers. Myself, Conrad Krausert, and Matt DeMille sitting next to me. We will see you around as the Flames continue their push for the postseason. Oh, that's the intro. Conrad hit the outro button.